Shulodd, and hello, Zelamals. I am Matthew Carauddo, author and developer of Diamond Dragons, and today, in this video series called Diamond Discussions, we will chat with varying artists, our diamonds in the rough. On today's Diamond Discussions, our diamond in the rough is John Meissner. So,
This
John,
guy.
welcome to the show, and thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Matthew. Thank you for having me, and thank you for casting me in your series. This is awesome.
But so, John, tell us about you. That's what our focus is on. You tell us about yourself.
Me. All right. Well, I am just a little over 50. I won't say how far. I am happily married up here in Ontario, Canada, with my lovely wife Paula, who's
Shout
also
outs
a
to
voice
Paula.
artist. Yeah, shout out to Paula. She's fantastic.
Also a voice artist.
Also a voice
people
artist.
Didn't know.
Well, and we have 2 little kids, so it's not always easy to be in the booth here and have nobody paying attention to what's going on out there because chaos.
Exactly.
So anyway, so we're up here in Ontario, Canada. I do not come from an acting background. Well, I kind of do. I mean, I did some stuff in school, like in high school, and I did a little bit of community theater here and there, but nothing really serious. I had expressed an interest in acting as a young person, but was told at the time to be more practical with my career choices. You know, go for the blue collar stuff. You know, yeah, and squash your dreams. Let's go work in a factory.
I was going to say it's always nice to be encouraged by your peers.
Yeah.
It gives you more ammunition later to be like, see, I turned out okay, right? See, I didn't have any problems.
I actually, you know what? I don't regret any of those choices because those choices led me into the military and into a career in law enforcement up here in Canada.
Yeah,
and
thank you for the service too, by the way.
You're quite welcome. Happy to do so. And that has given me a lot of fodder, you know, going forward. That I have a lot of experiences. That when someone says, you know, pretend you're jumping out of a plane, been there. I think I can make that stretch. I know what that's like. So,
little side note with Matthew, I too have jumped out of a plane 3 times, and people will be like, "Well, did you have a parachute?" And I'm like, "Well, you do the math. I'm still here."
Miracle of God. Yeah, didn't sprout wings and start flying.
And I should make it clear to the audience because they wouldn't know otherwise. Yes, it was on my own volition. And of course, yes, it was skydiving, and not like, oh my God, was the plane going down? I'm like, yeah, I barely survived. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I tucked and rolled right at the end there, and I made it.
Tucked and rolled is perfect. That would break the fall, not the death, but
no, for sure.
But anyhow, go on.
So anyhow, so I had a bit of a stint in the military, and I learned a lot from that experience. And I spent the majority of my adult life working in government, and retired from that not that long ago. And my lovely wife, God bless her again, she was like, why don't you start going down this path, because you've always talked about it. It's always been one of those things that's been in the back of your head, and you know, you always so dedicated and devoted to my actual job that this was always like, yeah, I'll get to it one of these days. I'll get there. But
I think I see what you're saying.
Never really. Yeah.
So she was on you for pushing your dreams aside instead, and I commend her for that too, because I'd be like, I would just going out, you know, to say this is that I'd be like, more women should think like Paula, and actually more people should think like Paula, right? Is like, don't put your dreams aside just for, you know, a job you may or may not like, or something where you're like, oh, but you know, there's the security and the money. It's like, yeah, well, you only live once, or so we believe, you know. So
yeah. Well, and especially when you've got 2 little kids and you know, mortgage and all that, the money's definitely the issue. But so she pushed me in this direction, and she's been my biggest supporter. And she actually came from a radio background, so she already had connections in the industry and knew some people. And when we started talking about voiceover, she's like, you know, I can connect you, I can set you up, we can learn about the business and the industry, and you know, how to do it right. And we're still learning how to do it right. I'll be 100% honest with you. You know, even Meryl Streep is still learning how to do it right.
Yeah, the learning never stops under any condition or whatever. And also, I should say this too. I just had another discussion with a former, well, I think he still does it, a radio voice voiceover artist. So it was really cool, really super interesting talking to him. So I'm sure people will find out more about that one as I post that one. But that's cool. So then, what did you find was the big impetus for you to get involved in voiceover?
I had always been told throughout my entire life that I have that voice, you know, and there's tons of voice artists out there, and even wannabe voice artists who have that same experience. You know, I can remember standing in line at the local deli, and I get up to the counter and I'll say, yeah, I'll have 100 grams of that and 200 grams of that, and somebody beside me goes, you know, like this. I go, what? And they're like, are you on the radio? Are you an actor? Like, what's? And I'm like, no, I'm just getting my luncheon meat here. Come
right.
on.
I think it's that deep kind of baritone / bassy kind of voice, right? Like you wouldn't be like, well, you know, I'll have the number one. You'll be like, I will have the number one along the side of fries. And can you make it with the spicy sauce? I always like that. It's really good. You got it.
That's right.
Oh, Vinny, I love it. You know, like, right?
Don't skip on the sauce. Yeah, no,
right.
for sure.
That's what I mean. So, so that's really cool. That because I'll be, you know, honest with you. People have even lately been. So I posted some things on my channel where I would pay homage to one of my favorite big inspirations, Carl Sagan, who he passed away in the 90s, but he also wrote a book called The Demon Haunted World, and I recommend it to anybody. But anyways, Carl Sagan wrote a film called Contact. Most people don't know that. It was back in the 90s with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey and Tom Skerritt and a lot of stars. But anyhow, my point is that I did these voiceovers of Carl Sagan's work to homage it, Pale Blue Dot, and there's another one called Humility. And a lot of people, once they started talking to me, they're just like, oh, Matthew, your voice is just so calming. And I'm like, well, it is a certain style when you apply your voice to either singing, I need to do sort of a voiceover that's meant to be like serene, or when you're doing a voiceover that's supposed to be a character and maybe a lot tougher or abrasive. But it was very interesting because, people have said this to me a lot over the years too. So I resonate with, you know, getting that kind of, everybody's going, hey, are you you're good. You're no, you're
no, you're good.
No,
you're good. No, you're good.
No, you're good. You're good. I love that though, right? It's always cool to get that kind of feeling, right? So you continued that and then decided I'm going to take it a step further.
Yeah, and what I found out almost instantly was the voice has nothing to do with it. It really doesn't.
True.
To
some extent. I mean,
it's an extra tool in your toolbox. That's
exactly.
all it is, really.
That it's like, for example, as a former fencer, just because you have great gear. Come on. I mean, we all know how that works. Like, that's, you know, the person with the shiniest sword, you'd be like, hey, come here. Fresh fish, you know. But it is true at the same time if you have the tools. And it's true that some people might say, oh, do you mean microphone? Do you mean booth? Do you mean this? I'm like, actually, it means all the things. Because again, if you consider the voice a tool, it is like an actor's tool to say, well, what about their hair? What about their costume? Or I guess you could call it wardrobe. It depends on how you look at it. What about sound? What about lighting? Aren't those all factors? I'm like, yeah, they are. They're all factors into whether it figures into the equation. But so I would say that people who have a more distinctive voice, just, you're right, they get a +1 benefit of that tool. But if the acting isn't there, and if all the other things aren't there, and the business side, you know, I don't have a good business side for sure.
Right.
Obviously.
Right.
So
Yep. No, that's part of the story too, right? To do anything entrepreneurial, you've got to have that business side, and for some people it's natural. For some people it just, you know, they just know how to connect and click. Others have to work at it, and it is, but it is part of the whole voiceover package. It's not just about, here's a microphone, here's a dude, here's a script, stand there and read. There's just
certainly not.
Oh, so many layers to the onion. It's just,
right. Well, another good analogy that I like to make, and this, I mean, whether you resonate on this one or not, I'm not sure, but certainly from being in the military, is that like from martial arts is like repetition is the key, and the dedication and consistency that you put into whatever it is that you're going to do. And certainly in martial arts, you're not going to get better at, for example, a round kick, or you're not going to get better at a jab or a cross or uppercut or just whatever by kind of every now and again, maybe horse sort of, I'll put in some effort. You're like, no, you got to be disciplined and consistent if you want to get good at it. I'm sorry. The same thing happens with acting, and the same thing happens with voiceover, and we all know it, that if you're not practicing your craft, you're either stagnating in it, or you might actually be decreasing and not know it. Right. And then 5 years goes by and you come back to it and you're kind of like, where did I put the bookmark? I don't remember. No idea.
True.
You know?
True. I always say it's like, not sure who said it. Maybe it was Michael Jordan. I don't want to misquote him, but
we'll find out.
Someone said it's not practice that makes perfect. It's perfect
practice makes perfect. Yeah, I will say this: my old coach Miklos Benedek, Miklos, it's me, Matthew. Do you remember? No, I'm just kidding. But if Miklos would be out there, he used to say that to me all the time when he would coach me, because he was one of my many fencing coaches, and he was great. His daughter was great. What the heck was her name? But either way, the point is, he used to say that all the time, and it would always resonate, because I'm like, that's correct. Because another analogy that Miklos made too, which again, I like crediting him with it, but I use it all the time. He's just like, Matthew, it's kind of like, you know how they program computers? I'm like, oh, I think I know where you're going. He's like, it's just so easy. You write the code, right? But then if you're like, oh, whoops, this is garbage. Delete, change, done. And he's like, when I've been teaching students, sometimes they come in and they're like, oh no, they've practiced this technique over and over and it's wrong. Or at least wrong from his perspective.
Sure.
And then therefore, for him to unprogram it, he's like, it's a completely different situation with the humans, where he's like, I can't just go, ready? You're good. It's not like the Matrix, like the whole right? Whoa, I know Kung Fu,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, and then you bring a good point too there about the military.
Right.
They actually gave me the pipes that I sort of enjoy right now, without because a lot of people to project is a hard thing to do. For a lot of people to bark and growl and not rip their throat to shreds is a hard thing to do. But being in the military, I think anybody who's been in the military, that would be fairly easy for them, because that is all you do, especially as you go up in the ranks, and you're out there on the parade square at 5 a.m. and you're shouting orders, and there's guys way down there that got to hear you.
Hoorah, Sergeant!
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of hoorah sergeants going on, right? Somebody better give me a hoorah sergeant, right? You're like, okay, I mean, also I can resonate with that, because I mean, among all the many hundred actors that I love, Arlie Ermy, I'm sure you're familiar with this gentleman, right? Full Metal Jacket, and he played, of course, I forgot the sergeant's actual character name.
In Full Metal Jacket?
Yes, I forget the character name. Do you remember? It doesn't matter. But
I do remember. I know exactly.
I'll put it up there. But Arlie Ermy is well known in the industry for playing all sorts of crazy sergeants who would be drill sergeants and yelling at all the cadets and whatnot. And the irony with it is Arlie Ermy was a real drill sergeant, and what kind of happened is he convinced Stanley Kubrick that he should be the role of the drill sergeant, because the guy who came aboard, he's kind of went, now is that really how you want to do it? Because that's not right, Stanley, And I think he also kind of wanted the role for his own, like, I want to get it. But the irony is that, think about it, it brought such a higher level to it. And apparently he did so many of these insults that he would improvise. And let's be honest, they were toxic and weird, but he's like, that's just the way it was at the time, like, this is how it was. And so if he wanted to depict it, and that's what Stanley Kubrick was going for. He wasn't trying to say, this is okay. He's trying to show how this was not okay. Like, if you want to create monsters, this is one way it happens. So absolutely. I think that was really crazy. Have you seen Full Metal Jacket then?
Oh yeah. Back in the Army days, that's all we pretty much did, is we watched, Commando and Predator and Platoon and Full Metal Jacket, and we were so into it back then, and that was right around the time.
You will not laugh, you will not cry, I will make you learn, or whatever he says, right? So well, that's good. So tell me about...
but yeah, that kind of gave me the pipes that I just and like I said, right now I don't have to strain or stress to get that projection. Whereas I mean, I was in a workshop not that long ago, and we were talking about that vocal combat, that being able to shout and bark and all that. And I remember this one actress. She was right beside me, and they had her do it, and it was, and I don't want to make fun of her, and hopefully if she sees this, my apologies, but it was okay. It was okay. But then I got up to the mic and the walls shook. And I remember looking at her out of the corner of my eye, and she stood back into one of these, and she's like, "Oh my God!" So I'm like, "Yeah, that's how you got to do it, right?" But again, in this environment, I don't need to do that. I don't need to blow my vocal cords out because I've got equipment here that picks that stuff up, and sometimes we can amplify it later, but
sometimes less is more too, especially depending on the moment. In fact, that's kind of the irony and the art of the microphone, like, which I also have mine here. It's just off camera, but the idea of me speaking from this distance and then speaking more like in here, it's completely different in the sound style quality that everybody's going for. Like, for example, everybody's familiar with Anthony Hopkins, not only for just him being an amazing actor, but most people, of course, remember him in a very strong role for him to kind of shock people in the Hannibal Lecter movies or Silence of the Lambs. A lot of the recordings that they wanted to get probably were in post because they didn't have a microphone shoved up right next to his mouth, but that way he could do the kind of thing like, "I'm having a friend for dinner and a nice Chianti." It doesn't work if I'm this far away and I say that line and they want that level of creepiness. So there's all sorts of aspects. Why is screaming a good idea? It depends on if it's a shot that's a wide and someone's like, "Look out!" That's a reason to be screaming. But you don't have to do that in certain environments where it's not going to make sense. So the point is, in all levels of performance, the distance from the microphone, or at least the way that the sound engineers are going to try to tell the audience about the distance of the sound, is actually super important. If we're super intimate, then we want it to be a lot more like this. Even if they're having a discussion right at say it's two tough guys having a discussion over the table, and they're going, "Now you're going to take care of the thing, right?" You know what I'm saying? He says, "Don't worry, Sam, I'm going to take care of the thing." Nobody, right? It's a different scene if I go, "Now you're going to take care of the thing, you know what I'm saying, right?" And he goes, "Don't you worry, Sam, I got to take care of it." Like, it's a totally different, it's the same lines, but it's a different mood. It's a different emotional content. And I feel like that is one of the biggest things a lot of vocal actors, or actors in general, just won't even consider until they're in that situation. So I'm sure now you've already been super aware of that.
Oh yeah, very much aware of it. So and that kind of brings us to where we are now. I mean, I've been doing voice acting for 3 years now, and I'm learning every day and perfecting my craft every day. And there's lots of jobs in between: commercials, video games, animation, everything that I get to practice on. Woohoo! And it all just keeps building that portfolio and that ability, that skill for me to go forward and do other projects. So,
and it's been a big pleasure. Like, I guess I should also tell the audience too, to like, what happened is, when I was working on the Diamond Dragons as a screenplay, so not the book, but the screenplay, for those who do or do not know, that I wrote that from 2018 to 2019 roughly, and somewhere in that year, in 2019, I started going, well, I'm gonna maybe think about getting some voice artists. So I put kind of the feelers out to the community, and I'm sort of proselyting out there, "Hey guys, I have all these roles." And actually, John could even tell you that I didn't tell them that they were dragons at all. I just said that these were these archetypal roles of the slated hero for a hero's journey, his companion, a female companion who's also a strength and leader, a old wizard type of person. And I gave many archetypes that I'd be like, this would be like Dumbledore, this would be like Obi-Wan Kenobi, this would be like Gandalf or Morpheus or something like that. And then anyways, John was amongst many people who auditioned, and I said no to a lot of people to to go for John, and I'm not trying to say, hey, that speaks a lot for John, but I'm like, that's the thing is, I liked his voice a lot, you know, compared to a lot of other people auditioning, and that goes for a lot of my other cast members who have come, and some have gone, you know, they can't stay aboard the project right now for many reasons, which is fine. They're just all so talented. And I also, John, I just interviewed Adam, so there'll be probably a link somewhere to link
Adam's
to Adam
great.
as well. Yeah,
Adam's got a lot in his toolbox.
Oh, I love
He's
it.
awesome.
I love it.
No, and I remember the audition process, and it was very much in my mind at the time. It was very much like Dungeons and Dragons kind of, you know, is what I was thinking in my mind. I'm like, okay, we got this guy over here, we got a wizard over here, and we got an elf over here, and a dwarf over here, and all the rest of this kind of stuff. And so yeah, but it was fun. It was fun, and that was that I think is the key to any kind of voice acting, or at least if you're going to do animation, is you got to have fun, you got to enjoy it, and you got to have an interest in what you're doing, because the audience is going to hear that you're just doing it for the sake of doing it, or you're just doing it, you know, because it's cash. But if you actually are interested in the project and you're like, oh, this sounds like fun, okay, I can do this, and you start getting into those silly voices and characters, then it becomes more enjoyable. And I think that joy and that love comes through in your voice, and that maybe that's what booked me. I don't know.
Well, actually, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because and John and I actually did have a discussion of this. I don't know if you remember or not too, where yeah, you probably know where I'm going, which is I told everybody from the get-go with the project that I wasn't like, hi, I'm not from Hollywood and a big job, you know, like this isn't going to be a project that's going to turn over in a week or two or whatever you think it's going to be. I'm just an individual. I'm this. I like laid all the cards out completely face up is what I'll say. And also I said at, you know, later points within the process when I was talking to people, I'm like, this isn't a good fit if you're just like, oh yeah, I can do that style voice. I want it to be like that. You're like, do you sound actually interested in the work? Because then once I sent everybody a little bit of their, you know, the screenplay, and of course I didn't reveal all of it to them right away, unless I was going to lock them in, you know, I wanted to be like, so what did you think of it? And then the real test was listening to see if anybody even read it, you know, because then once I, you know, not kind of cornered them, but I said, so what did you think of it? I could tell if people pretended to have read any of it. And then I could tell when people had read it, but they weren't moved by it at all. And then I could tell when people were like, oh my God, I love it. You know, like whatever it is that they were, I don't know, you know, like, I don't know. And the point was that I wanted to get that with people so that if I could resonate with their voice, it's one thing. If I could resonate with their personality and their style and their genuineness, because that's important with acting, being genuine.
Sure it is.
Then resonate with them on the level that I'm like, you know that this isn't something that is like going to be by the numbers, right? And then if they were like, oh, I thought that this is, I read somewhere that you'd give us immediately $25,000, you know, I'd be like, come on now, you know that I don't do that. I didn't have that ability. I would have told you, you know, I would have been up front. So I'm just glad that anybody's aboard the project in the first place, but I'm also glad that people realized that I wasn't the fly-by-nighter that some like, you know, like, it's not becoming this book for no reason. This is a good reason, and I know that the public will benefit greatly from reading the story and understanding the story, and one day seeing the story and hearing John Meissner.
It'll be seen. It'll be seen. Let's see. This whole project is on my vision board. It is going to be seen.
I can't wait because it's going to be fantastic, especially when there's other things going on, which I won't reveal to the audience, but I'm like, there may be opportunity for John's voice to be certainly in Diamond Dragons 2 as well. So I don't think I'm giving any spoilers away from that.
No, don't give any spoilers away.
I won't reveal anything, but you know, maybe they'll find out something, maybe they won't. Who knows?
Maybe, who knows? Yeah, I remember back in the very beginning there, you farming out just some questions, you know, about the book. And I think that's how you were gauging people's level of interest in it is, you know, what do you think of this character? And I'm thinking of changes in his name. Any ideas? And, you know, what do we think we should do here? And I mean, you're always doing that. And that's what's great is that you're not just kind of sitting there going, well, this is my story and, you know, like it or leave it. You're always asking the talent, hey, how could we make this better? Or how could we improve that there? And, you know, I think the whole process, the entire time I've known you, there's always been this constant exchange of feedback. Just all of us working together, trying to make this story amazing, right? So.
Well, I really appreciate that you said that too, because then again, it'd be one thing if I said that about myself, because then that would come off as possibly pretentious or egotistical, right? Because from my perspective, I said I am always collaborative, and then people would be like, No, he's not. He doesn't
Yeah.
listen to anybody. But
Yeah.
it's cool that if it's coming from you, and that's, by the way, what I'm saying is I not only appreciate it, but like I acknowledge it, because that's kind of me. Like I've always looked
Yeah.
at every art as a collaborative process, and that's actually even independent of the people currently working on it. And here's why: we all have teachers, we
Yeah.
all have parents, whether
Yeah.
they're dead, buried, we were adopted or not. The point is, we had people who were in our lives that built us into the people that we became. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they made us. It just means that they influenced us in some direction, whether we decided to stay away from certain people and we listen to them and be like, no thank you, I learned no thank you to those things, or if
Yep.
we're like, this person has been there, tried and true, and etc., and I listened to everything and I learned all this information. So for example, to me, there's a lot of aspects of Diamond Dragons that comes from some of the video game influences that I had from people like John Van Canegum, and I'm kind of making a shout out there that a lot of people won't even know. John Van Canegum was the creator of the Might and Magic series of games, which later developed into something called the Heroes of Might and Magic series of games. And there is just a huge influence that gave to my project, because there's a lot of dragons in his Might and Magic stories.
Yep.
And additionally, there was a guy named Richard Garriott who created this game series called Ultima way back in the day under a game company called Origin Systems. I actually have some footage of me with the game boxes, because I still have Richard Garriott's original, like the old games, you know, when they came on floppy disks and everything, you know, so it's kind of like a nostalgia thing. But the point is, they had such wonderful stories and all these great things, and they've influenced my life. It doesn't mean that the story's based on anything in there, really. There's little homages here and there, but the idea is that everything influences each other. So I certainly felt like, hey, once I cast someone as Titan, I want to hear from them. I want to hear if they say, you know, Matthew, I just feel like he wouldn't have stood for this, so he doesn't say anything during this time. So what if he spoke up at that moment? Not that we had that conversation, but like I would be open if someone's like, do you think Titan needs to say something right now? Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? I'd want to know how that feels, or if it's like, you know, why did this happen? And it's also been just interesting to see like how people's voices have made me interpret my own characters.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because it kind of shapes it a little bit differently. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what that voice sounds like next to the other one. And that's another part of the process of making the casting choices, where I was like, this one next to that one, oh, that sounds great, you know? So
yeah, for sure.
So it's always been collaborative.
Yeah, no, it's great. I am excited about it. Can't wait till the book comes out. Can't wait till the movie comes out. Can't wait till the video game comes out.
You don't even know. Who knows? The book may be out by the time this thing is published. So you never know. You'll have to check links in the description.
There you go.
That's the thing. I film these a little bit ahead of time sometimes, and I don't know. So you don't know what day it is. You have no idea what time it is. You are moving into a different dimension now.
Twilight Zone.
Exactly. I'm Rod Serling. But very good. Well, you know, it's been a pleasure having you here, and
Thanks,
I just have a few last questions to kind of wrap this up with. So, in your opinion, then, John, what is the worst actor or vocal artist habit that you have?
The worst habit that I have is being too self-critical. And I think everybody has this of all their work. It's never good enough, right? My wife will be the first one to tell you that I cook. That's one of my hobbies. And when I cook something, like I could make restaurant quality pasta and dessert and, you know, everything, and lay it all out there. And she'll be like, this was really good. You did a great job. And I'm like, nah, it was a little soggy. The pasta was a little ended on. She's like,
that sounds like the John.
You're so self-critical. And I'm like, can't you just enjoy the fact that we're having this amazing meal? I'm like, I'm enjoying it, but I'm always looking to do it better, you know, and it's never good enough. So, and
you may have disguised that as your worst, but that kind of falls on the worst and best. But you're right. If you know,
it's half and half, because sometimes that can be a detriment, you know, that you, and again, any voice artist will probably tell you this. You pop into the booth, you grab your script, you do a take. I don't like that. And then you do 12, 15, 20 takes. And then you go back and you listen to the first one, you go, yeah, this one's good enough. That's the one you send in. So you've spent all that energy being critical when you should have just sent the first one in. So
it's funny you mentioned that too, because really quick on that too, that is precisely why I actually never really cared too much of getting super overly specific about the way we would do. Like what some people don't know is we've done a kind of secret screenplay reading that one day I may or may not release. It'll depend, because I was just mostly tests. But anyways, that it didn't matter to me exactly how everybody was going to read their voices during those times, because we still are feeling it out and getting to the feeling of where it needs to go. So there's no need for perfection, not yet. And so I completely understand, John, that sometimes you can be too hard on yourself, but there's also a good time to know when is perfection the flavor of the day or the moment, or when is it sort of like the General S. Patton thing, where he's like, a good plan executed violently now is better than the perfect plan, or the ostensibly, possibly, plausibly, #? Plan sometime into the near future.
Because perfect is something you'll never attain.
Yeah.
And if it was, it wouldn't be perfect.
Precisely, because then you would say there's still more. But I do appreciate people who strive to be better at things, because that's one of the qualities I like about you, John, is that instead of just being like, okay, whatever, can we just get it over with, please? You know, it's sort of like,
into my drinking time.
Yeah, well, I mean, and think about it. If that was the case, right? If that was the case, too, we'd be like, well, why do we want to cast those people? Because it's like they're not going to be squeezing out all the emotional content. And I guess I could, if this was more of a throwaway project, and it was sort of like, we're just doing a quick comedy, just a quick, it's no big deal, but I'm trying to do something that's akin to Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Diamond Dragons. So it's sort of like, it requires a certain level of discipline and consistency, and also the amount to give the best. But it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be the best, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. So what would you say then is, what's then the best habit that you do have?
The best habit that I do have is I am very thorough. And again, that kind of goes back to that perfection thing, which is maybe a bad thing, but I don't send out garbage. And I know that, and I'm not naming names, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, but I've heard a lot of horror stories from casting directors and other voice actors in the industry, where they say, you know, you hear that expression, they just phoned it in. You know, they had an audition, they just phoned it in. And I'm like, I suppose if you're Bruce Willis or Meryl Streep, you can just phone it in, you know, but no, for me, if I've got an audition to do, if I've got a job to do, more importantly, if I got a job to do, I will do everything to make sure that audio is pristine before it leaves here, because it's got my name on it. And if it goes out there and people look at it and say this is garbage, then you're creating a reputation for yourself of not being thorough and not being professional. So
that's a really good point. No, I mean, I appreciate that, and I resonate with it too. There is sort of one of those, you know, fine lines, as they say. Sometimes when you have a schedule, you're like, I got to get this stuff done, but at the same time, you're right. That's when I'm always saying, still do your best given the circumstances. You know, someone might say, hey, I only have 2 days to do this, and I'd be like, well, how much would you normally need? And if they're like, a month, I'd be like, oh man, that sucks, like, good luck. But you know that means, if the person's even thinking in that regard, it means they're thinking so hard on how can I give my best when I'm pretty certain it's not possible, but given my circumstances, I can rise to this challenge. We'll see what I can come up with in 2 days, aka what I needed was 2 months or whatever, you know.
Right. And there's a lot of people who do, they will try and get things done as quickly as they can, because they think they're under a deadline, or they think that the person on the receiving end is going to be more stringent with the time restrictions than they are. And all it takes is just a simple phone call and say, or an email and say, hey, I've got it, I'm working on it, give me just another couple hours, or give me half a day, or whatever. And a lot of times people are like, yeah, no problem. I mean, you know, it's not that big of a deal to ask people for that extent, especially if you know you're not going to be able to meet that timeline. And the Army saying is that if it's due Sunday, you better have it finished on Friday.
Right.
You know, you don't wait till Saturday night and you know, sitting there at midnight going, I gotta get this done before tomorrow.
But that said, as we know, and the military is great for that, and that it's good discipline and consistency. You're right. I think more importantly there, whether we want to argue whether someone should be prepared or not, or this or that, the other, because the creative art is a creative process, that it doesn't always fit into these particular gaps. But here's my point is, I'm glad that you brought up communication, because it's like, what's the harm in you asking? Now, if someone gets mad at you for saying, look, I think I need more time, can you give me more time?
Yep.
If they're upset,
Yep.
then that's on them, and they shouldn't be. What they really should do is just say, well, unfortunately, no, I understand why you're asking for it, but I'm just telling you, no, we can't, and I'll give you a short reason why. Is always plausible. Like, for example, let's say you did need more time and they said, normally we would love to give you more time. However, we have a deadline that is so hard, if we miss it, we're fired. So
the
then
whole
you're
thing's
like,
in the can.
oh,
Yeah, absolutely.
people often forget that. The actors will forget that, and they'll sit there and go like, oh yeah, I forgot that this whole project isn't just about me. Like, oh, there's people making money off my things, and like, maybe I can't just take a whole month. You know, you have to literally sometimes be like, I realize that even though I would like more time, we don't have it. And also, it's not financially sound for us to continue to do this because we want to get it done. And so there's that double-edged sword where when is art done? And most people will tell you, well, never. You just release it and then you cry. No, I'm just kidding. You know?
Well, and you know, in our voiceover business here, both Paula and I, we've had those opportunities or those occasions where someone has contacted us for some voiceover work, and you know, they kind of think, kind of like what you just said, they're the only client we have, and it's like, no, you are on a list of clients. You're not, you know, and I would love to treat you as if you're the only client we have, but the reality is we've got other things in the queue right now, and sometimes we're able to say, look, can you wait an extra day or an extra half a day? We've got this going on. Either they can or they can't, or if it's one of those cases where it's a absolute firm deadline, there's just no getting around it and they need it yesterday, it's like, okay, I can probably put all this aside for half hour, hammer this thing out, get it to you, and then carry on with my work.
Precisely.
Right? So there's always flexibility. There's always flexibility on both ends, right? So
I mean, I totally agree with you too. And also just like, I love that too. You're their only client. How pretentious of them. No, I'm sorry. I just had to say that because it's like, right, come on. Like, we all have lives and deadlines. Would you please stop with this whole thing? Like, you have to stop everything. We have something you have to do now. It's sort of like, what are you talking about? When did you start thinking about casting? Yesterday? And you want to have it done tomorrow? Like, what? Like, that tells me you're flying by the seat of your pants and you have no intentions of doing it right. You're just in some weird random hurry, and that's
or there's someone higher above them that they're trying to please, because they've always got someone else higher above them that they're trying to please, and they're like, if I can get this to this guy really quick, that'll make me look good, so I'm going to go to this guy and see if he can drop everything he's got and get it to me right away, and then I'll push it up the ladder. And
we know that that's a great way to just not only burn all your bridges but burn your project, because you'll be like, again, it's like you just said too earlier, you know, you just try to do it perfect because your image is out there. Jackie Chan used to say that all the time when they'd ask him questions, you know, what are your bits of advice to the young people? He says, when you're young, do it when you're young, because when you're old, you might not be able to do it anymore. And two, if it's film, do as many takes as you possibly can, that then you're like, okay, it's really good, because it's forever. Once I print that and I put it in a movie, people come, I love how he would say too, people come, they don't look at the movie and they think, oh, poor Jackie, he probably didn't have enough budget and time, and so good movie, bad movie. And I was like, he's so right. Like he totally nailed it. No one says, well, I'm sure Marvel just didn't have the budget and the time. They were probably going through some really tough time. No, everybody kind of goes, man, that sucked. Or they're like, wow, that was great. That's all. No one ever gives the credit for, gee, I wonder if John was going through a hard time. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the real world. You want to release a good product, make it good, and then release it. Don't try to release it cruddy and then kind of hope for the best later.
Exactly. Yeah. Good.
So one last question, John.
Sure.
Who's the next diamond in the rough? Who do you think could withstand the onslaught of this terribly grilling, awful experience? Drill Sergeant, you will not laugh. You will not cry. I will break you.
Well, I think you've done Adam already. You said, right? He would have been my first choice because he's a hoot. He's a hoot. I love listening to Adam.
Yeah, don't say it like that. People get the wrong idea. But Adam and I have had a discussion.
You've had the discussion. So I would say the next person, maybe Callie Callie would be interesting.
It's funny you mentioned. I've been trying to reach dear Callie Ross, and Callie, shout out to you. We love you as Raina and everything else. So yeah, that would be great, right? We would be here forever though, of course, too, which is good. Yeah,
That is good.
Well, John, thanks so much for coming on the show. It's just been a pleasure, and it's been a pleasure to get to know you over the years and have you as a Titan aboard the project. Again, this is John Meissner. There's going to be links in the description, and you can learn about John and Paula and his wonderful family of voice artists in the description and whatnot. I definitely recommend you go have a look at his site, which is johnmeissner.com. Is that correct?
No, it's Meissner Sound.
Oh, sorry, Meissner.
There's two Meissners in the family.
Copy that. Well, I wasn't
voice
sure.
Actors, so it's we were thinking about that when we came up with the name. It's like, okay, well, we can't say it's me and we can't say it's you, so we got to figure out how to make it sound like it's both of us.
That's cool, so, Meissner Sound.
And it does sound like Meissner Sound. So yeah, it works out.
It works for me, and I sure appreciate it. Well, thanks again so much, and hey, everybody out there, thanks for watching the channel, and we'll see you next time on Diamond Discussions. Thanks for watching. Would you like to be a guest on the show, or do you know a diamond in the rough who should? Contact us, diamonddragonstale@gmail.com. Until then, Chion, Chifoy, Vas Res, and Iye Laha.